because you really want the catecholamines and cortisol elevated early in the day. Okay, so that's deliberate cold exposure. We already talked about exercise. So if you're doing your exercise early in the day, there's no reason why it couldn't be done in concert with this deliberate cold exposure. I recommend doing the deliberate cold exposure first for the reasons we talked about a few minutes ago. And then, of course, there are compounds, both prescription and over-the-counter compounds, that can indeed raise your baseline levels of dopamine for an hour or more. And when I say an hour or more, it really depends on individual variation in terms of how quickly you metabolize dopamine. And it depends on individual variation in how you manage or tolerate different dosages of drugs and different types of drugs. So the typical drugs, and here I'm talking about legal prescription drugs for increasing dopamine, are things like Ritalin, Adderall. Modafinil and armodafinil also tap into this system. And I did an entire episode about ADHD, which is the typical context in which you hear about these prescription drugs. But assuming it's prescribed by a doctor for either clinical reasons like ADHD or for other reasons, all of those compounds do significantly increase baseline levels of dopamine for many, many hours. That's absolutely clear, and it's one of the major reasons why those drugs are so effective in increasing motivation and attention. Then there are compounds that are sold over the counter, things like amino acids, such as L-tyrosine itself.